rope was tied tight. It wasn't going anywhere. Neither was he. October 9th, 2024. Interstate 75, Tampa, Florida. The evacuation had already begun. And standing in water up to his chest, alone on the side of one of America's busiest highways, was a dog. He had been waiting long enough that the water had risen from his ankles to his belly to here. Hurricane Milton was 11 hours from making landfall, and no one was coming for this dog. This was not an accident. This was not a dog who slipped his leash. Someone tied this knot. Someone walked away. And someone knew exactly what was coming. Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Orlando Morales had been on emergency duty since 4 a.m. He had been clearing debris, directing traffic, preparing for the worst storm to hit Tampa Bay in decades. And then he saw him. The dog barked the moment the door opened. Not a greeting bark, a bark that said, "Don't come any closer." Morales stopped. He wasn't going to force this. Not here, not now. And then, in the middle of a highway, in the rain, before the worst hurricane in years, he said something to this dog that 3 million people would eventually hear. He crouched down, slowly, the way you do when you're not a threat. "It's okay, buddy," he said. "It's okay. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It's okay, buddy. It's okay." For one long moment, the dog just looked at him. This moment was captured on camera. The knot. Look at the knot. This wasn't a panicked man making a bad decision in a hurry. This took time. This took effort. This was a choice. The man who left him there had a name for this dog. He called him Jumbo. And when investigators found that man, he told them he just couldn't find anyone to take the dog. So he drove away. Morales kept talking, kept moving slowly. Because this dog had been betrayed by the last human who came toward him. But Morales wasn't that man. The rope came free. And this dog, who had every reason to run, didn't move. What happened next would begin a chain of events that would change Florida law forever. To understand why a dog ended up on a hurricane highway, you have to understand the 24 hours that led him there. Tampa Bay had been watching Hurricane Milton for days. By October 8th, the day before, the order was clear: evacuate. In Ruskin, a small community south of Tampa, 23-year-old Giovanni Aldama Garcia was packing. He was leaving. The question is, why wasn't the dog in the car? Trooper, then called Jumbo, had lived with Garcia. He had a yard. He had a bowl. He had what every dog deserves as a home. What Garcia told investigators was simple. He couldn't find anyone to take the dog. So he made a decision that would follow him for the rest of his life. The criminal affidavit would later describe the conditions that morning: heavy rains, rising floodwater. Garcia tied the dog to the fence, not loosely, not temporarily, tightly. And then he walked back to his car and drove away. And Trooper watched the car disappear, the way dogs do, with total heartbreaking faith that this is temporary, that someone will come back. He drove away. The storm moved closer. And on I-75, a dog waited. The water that would rise to his chest didn't do it overnight. It happened inch by inch. Thousands of cars passed that stretch of I-75 that morning. Thousands of people evacuating. Eyes on the road. Eyes anywhere except the fence line. Trooper Morales was moving toward the storm while everyone else was moving away from it. That's his job. And that's why he was the one who saw. He almost didn't stop. It was a shape in the rain. It could have been debris, a piece of plastic, anything. And then it moved. And he knew. He called it in. Activated his camera. Got out of the car. Everything he did in the next 6 minutes would be recorded. The dog barked hard, and Morales stopped. And then, he did something no one expected. He got down. In the middle of a hurricane evacuation, in floodwater, in his patrol uniform, he got down to this dog's level, because he understood something. This dog didn't need to be subdued. He needed to be believed. He needed someone to prove, in the most basic, physical way, that not every human walks away. He extended his hand. Trooper leaned forward, just barely, and sniffed, the way dogs ask questions they can't put into words. "It's okay, buddy," Morales said again. Softer now. "I don't blame you." 3 million people would eventually watch this video. Many of them would cry at this moment. Not because of the drama, but because of the gentleness. When FHP Tampa posted the video with the words, "Do not do this to your pets, please," it exploded. DeSantis shared it. National news picked it up. Giovanni Aldama Garcia, 23. of Ruskin, Florida, was arrested on October 14th, 5 days after the rescue. Charge aggravated animal cruelty, a felony. At the press conference, DeSantis said, "We said you'd be held accountable. And you will be." But all of that, the press conferences, the charges, none of it was Trooper's world anymore. His world had just become this a warm car seat, and a man who hadn't left. He was taken directly to a veterinarian. And when the exam was done, the vet's report revealed the truth of what Trooper had survived. Clean bill of health. Physically, the water hadn't taken him. The governor's office called the Leon County Humane Society. They came to get Trooper the same day. And they gave this dog a name that meant something. Not Jumbo, not a joke. They called him Trooper. He didn't eat much those first days. He slept the way traumatized animals sleep, curled tight, eyes half open. It was the male staff who noticed it first. Trooper's entire body language changed the moment a man approached. Something left behind on a highway fence. With the women on staff, he was different. Still careful, still watchful, but open to the possibility of a treat, of a hand that hadn't tied knots. By the second day, the Humane Society's inbox was full. Hundreds of people across the country wanted to adopt Trooper. The phones didn't stop. The Humane Society said no to almost all of them. They posted, "We want to be sure we know exactly what he needs before considering adoption. We want his future to be kind to him." They began decompression care. You don't push. You don't demand. You simply exist near the animal and let him decide how close is safe. A male staff member tried something different. He went into the kennel, sat in the corner, and did nothing. Didn't look at the dog. Didn't reach for him. Just breathed. It took 23 minutes. But Trooper moved. Not toward the man. Just away from the wall. Into the middle of his kennel. The calls kept coming. From California. From New York. From Texas. Everyone had seen Trooper's face and felt something they couldn't name. Meanwhile, the governor was keeping personal tabs on the case. On October 15th, he told the world, Garcia would face the full weight of Florida law. Garcia's own words, he left Jumbo because he couldn't find anyone to take him. Investigators noted what Garcia never explained. Why the dog wasn't in the car. There was room. He chose not to make it. Trooper was slowly decompressing. Day 4. A rope toy was placed in the kennel. The shelter worker stepped back, and Trooper looked at it for a very long time. He left the toy alone. Hundreds of people wanted him. He wanted no one. A male staff member tried something different. He went in, sat in the corner, and did nothing. Didn't look. Didn't reach. Just breathed. It took 23 minutes. But Trooper moved away from the wall, into the middle of his kennel. One step toward the possibility. The shelter worker didn't react. That was the discipline. You don't reward movement with overwhelming attention. You just stay. You prove that your presence is safe. Something the shelter would later post about, quietly on night 6. For the first time, Trooper smiled. The male worker sat quietly in his corner. He didn't reach out. He didn't call the dog. He just waited. Trooper walked over, sat down 2 feet away, and stayed there. He didn't ask for a pet. He just decided that this man's corner was where he wanted to be. By week 3, Trooper's story had reached CBS Mornings, national television. Frank and Carla Spina were at home in Parkland when they saw Trooper's face on television. Frank had been a bull terrier owner for 30 years. Their last bull terrier, Diesel, had died in April. He was 15. Dallas had been grieving ever since. She'd stopped playing, just waited. When Frank saw Trooper, he didn't reach for his phone to fill out a form. He looked at his wife, and they both said the same thing at the same moment. "We have to go get him." That was it. Frank called the shelter. In Tallahassee, 4 hours away, on a Tuesday afternoon. The shelter coordinator told Frank about the hundreds of applications, and then mentioned one significant concern. Trooper had shown real difficulty with men. Frank listened. He didn't argue. He just said, "Bring our other dog. Let us come. Give us 3 minutes with him." What Frank hadn't told the shelter yet was this: he and Carla had rescued 4 bull terriers. Every single one had come with damage. Every single one had healed. They drove. Frank told his wife, within 5 minutes, "Trooper and I are going to be best friends."
All right, here we are. Look how excited Dallas is.
Let's go inside.
Easy now. Go say hi. Good boy. He's just sitting there. See? No rush.
Trooper looked at Frank. Frank looked at the floor. The dog took one step, then another. In less than 3 minutes, Trooper walked over, slid under Frank's knees, lay down, and started wagging his tail so hard his whole body shook. The shelter coordinator looked at Frank and Carla and said 4 words. You cast a spell on him. Frank hadn't. He'd just shown up. Sometimes that's the only spell there is. But the shelter had one more test. One more introduction. The one they weren't sure about. Dallas came through the gate. She'd been grieving Diesel for 7 months. She was a dog waiting for something, without knowing what. She walked through the gate. Trooper looked up, and something, wordless, instinctive, older than language, happened between them. They ran to each other, pressed foreheads, tails going so fast. Frank said later he thought Trooper might helicopter clean off the ground. Frank said, when Dallas met Trooper, her eyes lit up and they were kissing each other. It was love at first sight. The Leon County Humane Society chose the Spinas from hundreds of applicants. 1 week later, they came back to take him home, and Trooper, who had spent weeks pressed to the back wall of a shelter kennel, walked straight to their car and got in. The staff watched the car pull out. Someone said, he's gonna have the best life. Someone else said, he already is. The first night, he walked every room, sniffed every corner, checked every exit, the way dogs from uncertain situations do. He stood at the back door for a long time, looking at the yard. Carla stood beside him, not pushing, not calling him out, just present. He stepped into the yard. Dallas came out after him, and they moved through the yard together, just near each other. Frank sat on the porch and watched them. He said later, these dogs, they know. They know when something is right. Dallas wagged that first afternoon. A real wag, full body, loose, genuine. Carla watched from the kitchen window and cried. By the second night, Trooper was on the couch, between Frank and Carla, exactly where Frank had predicted. And they slept together, Dallas and Trooper, the way dogs sleep when they finally feel safe, loose, heavy, trusting the dark around them. At 2 in the morning on the first night, Carla heard something from the living room. She got up, walked quietly to the doorway. Trooper was sitting up, looking out the window, tail sweeping the bed, not afraid of the dark, not waiting for something bad, just awake and okay. Carla stood in the doorway and didn't say anything. By the third morning, he ate his breakfast without checking the door. That sounds like nothing. For anyone watching a trauma recovery, it is everything. Frank worked with him daily. Fetch, walks, time in the yard, not training, play. The kind of time that tells a dog you are wanted for who you are. Within 2 weeks, Frank's captured. He's doing wonderful. The Leon County Humane Society posted the update. The comments came in thousands. People across the country who had followed the story seeing its resolution. But while Trooper was learning what home felt like, in a Tampa courtroom, the legal system was catching up with the man who had made all of this necessary. Giovanni Aldama Garcia faced a felony animal cruelty charge. The affidavit was specific, the risk of death was real. The suffering was excessive, and it was not an accident. Hillsborough County was under a state of emergency. There was flooding. There was a hurricane. Garcia tied the dog, walked away, and drove to safety without him. Garcia's own words, he left Jumbo because he couldn't find anyone to take him. Investigators noted what Garcia never explained, why the dog wasn't in the car. Animal welfare advocates, law enforcement officials, and legislators began working on a bill that used Trooper's name. May 28, 2025, 7 months after a highway trooper crouched in floodwater on I-75, Governor Ron DeSantis signed 2 bills into law. He signed them at a dog rescue facility in South Florida. Because where else would you sign an animal protection law, but in the place doing the work, Trooper's Law? If you restrain an animal and abandon it outside during a natural disaster, you have committed a third-degree felony in the state of Florida, up to 5 years in prison, a $10,000 fine, for doing what Garcia did on the morning of October 9, 2024. DeSantis said, "I was proud to sign Trooper's Law today. Florida stands by man's best friend." The pen came down. One dog on one highway had changed the legal landscape of an entire state. Trooper was in Parkland, in his yard, playing with Dallas, being Frank's boy. Frank saw the news alert the day the law was signed. He looked at Trooper, running in the yard, utterly unconcerned with legislation. He just said, "Hey, Trooper." And Trooper came running. He was abandoned in a storm. Now his name is written into the law of an entire state. The dog in the water and the dog on the couch are the same animal. Same eyes, same ears. But not the same dog. Not anymore. Frank is a retired lawyer. He spent decades in rooms where words had to be precise. He said, "He's doing wonderful," and meant both words. Dallas, who stopped wagging after Diesel died, now steals Trooper's toy every morning at 7 a.m. on purpose, because she knows he'll chase her, and they run. Carla says watching Trooper run is her favorite thing, that there's something about the way he runs, like he's making up for lost time.
That's my good boy, so relaxed. I see you waiting, Dallas. Your turn now.
Dallas still steals his spot on the couch every morning. And Trooper lets her, but only for a minute, before wedging himself back in beside Frank, where he belongs. Carla says there's one thing Trooper does every single evening, without fail. Same time, same spot, at sunset every evening, Trooper goes to the window and watches the sky go from blue to orange to dark, and Frank sits beside him. And every single night, when the lights go off and Trooper settles on his bed, Frank says something.
You are my everything, buddy. My best friend.
This is Trooper. He was tied to a fence on Interstate 75 on October 9, 2024, with a storm coming and no one coming for him. And then one person did, and then another, and then an entire state did. The Leon County Humane Society said, when they gave him his name, because of how much he's been through, and to honor those who saved him, he earned both. Because of Trooper, the next dog left in a storm in Florida has the law standing between it and that fate. Does that matter to you? I think it does. Or you wouldn't still be here. If Trooper's story stayed with you, if you felt something watching him come back, then you already know what this channel is for. We find the real ones every week. Subscribe to Rescue with Paws. Not because we asked. Tell us in the comments, has an animal ever found you at exactly the right moment? Or did you find one? We read every single one. Next week. Rescue with Paws. Every story earns its ending.